Hello, I am Emily with MSense, and today I would like to just briefly talk about my pain journey and what has led me here. As a massage therapist for 15 plus years, I have seen a lot of people come and go on my table that were in pain, and I always empathized with their pain. I always could feel their pain. That is actually one of my gifts, is as I massage or touch people's pain, I can actually feel what their pain feels like on a brief scale. For a long time, I thought that this was kind of just the weirdest thing. I would explain to some of my teachers, I'm like, why do I feel like, okay, their shoulder's hurting, why is my shoulder hurting? And like, as I grew in attachment and connection with some of my regular clients, I actually found that I could feel their pain coming in. And it was a common occurrence that I would have a client come in and I'd be like, hey, how are you doing today? And they're like, oh, my shoulder's hurting. I'm like, oh, so that's who I was feeling today. And it happened often, and in my world, it kind of was just the thing. It was, we would make jokes about it. Oh, we're currently getting some thunder right now. But as I went through my first pregnancy, I saw the need for women to care for themselves. So I got into a little bit more pregnancy massage and really enjoyed that time of life for other women. But for me, it was miserable. Oh, it was miserable. And I'm sure there's lots of women's with stories much more tragic than mine, but after my first pregnancy, I was determined that my second one was going to be natural. It was going to be this beautiful awakening experience, this beautiful birth. And I even made sure I prepared my body. I was doing yoga very routinely. I was working up to a headstand. I was really making sure my core was just, in great shape so it could bounce back from that pregnancy. Like, I went into it headstrong. I was like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna rock it, and we're gonna make it happen. And I was even doing like smoothies for the first few months of my second pregnancy, doing really well, and then morning sickness hit and life happens. And I had a 4-year-old at home and working full time. My husband and I had bought in a house, so we were doing the thing. We were living life, and we had struggles, and we just made do. You kind of put yourself on the back burner, especially as a provider for other people. I put myself on the back burner. And that was kind of where I started slipping a little bit and taking care of myself and my body, but I still felt good going into it, like gonna do this, made sure I put my feet up. I started having contractions early on in the pregnancy, probably about 5 months. So I had to rest a little bit more. They always say that the second pregnancy, you start to feel the effects a little bit more, and I did. I mean, it was kind of normal, typical. It didn't need it. My second did not need as much monitoring as my first. I had a lot of ultrasounds with my first pregnancy. So my second pregnancy, like I said, we wanted to do it all natural. Like, we had a birthing suite planned. Like, we were trying. And I won't go into too much detail, but we wound up with a cesarean birth, emergency. My son had actually ripped open, and it was stuck in the uterus, but then it did a little damage. The term that was thrown around was it was like sewing hamburger meat back together. So, we made it through. I had no doubt in my mind that I was making it through it. I had kind of a cool out-of-body experience during the process, so that was kind of cool. But I had a healthy baby boy and I was alive, so I was happy as hell. I remember at my 6-week checkup, my surgeon, who actually had been a surgeon overseas during the war, he was like, I'm happy to see that you walked out of the hospital because I wasn't sure you were going to. And I was like, wait, it wasn't that bad. And he's like, nope, it wasn't. That was like the first inkling that maybe it was a little worse than I thought. Like, I think we just go through the motions as moms sometimes, or as providers, that we just don't notice, what it could have been like. And I've always tried to have the attitude of gratitude. And I was like, well, thank you, doctor. And, we'll be on our way. And so I did. I tried. I remember at 1 month out, it was too, like, the moment. I was laying there sleeping with my son on my chest, and I felt as if my scar tissue was ripping open. And it was a very similar feeling that I would feel for the next 7 years. Every time I would have my cycle, every time I would do anything strenuous, toward the end there, it was every single time I tried to exercise or do a sit-up, I would have pain down in my scar tissue. I would have sharp shooting pains. I remember the first anniversary, my son's first birthday, I didn't plan to work because I had every single month, same day, I would always have this pain. And I mean, it felt like I was saying, it felt like there was something scratching and tearing and pulling inside. There were other symptoms I was having too. I had symptoms of, ladies, when we get our periods, there's certain digestive issues that go on, and mine got out of whack to the point where if I had any breads or sugars, it was very hard on my system, and I just wasn't going. I tried fiber, tried everything. You try everything, and nothing was working. And I tried the apps to regulate your cycle and stuff like that, and some of those didn't even help because it was a little bit more sporadic, but yet still on this day every month I was still having this pain. And so I thought, oh, that's when I'm ovulating, or you kind of go around making excuses because all of a sudden it's that time again, and you're like, oh my God, I'm in pain again. Is it that, life just happens, and we don't necessarily have a chance to journal every day when you've got 2 kids and we're trying to make a go of life. So eventually I remember there was one day where I bent down to help my son tie his shoe for school, and I couldn't get up. My back was locked up, the front of me was locked up, and I said, I have to figure this out. And I was like, Em, you're a massage therapist. You can do this. And I mean, I had tried a lot of different techniques, but I didn't sit and do like I would for my own clients. I didn't sit my ass down and write out a plan. And so I did. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because there was a lot of components to it, and there will be. Your healing journey is every bit of you. And so it will take every bit of you to work on it. But it will be worth it, because what I found out in some of these different practices, I had a lot of fun with it. You got to laugh at yourself sometimes too. There were, like, I bought a set of cupping cups. I mean, nothing new for me, and now you can get them. When I was in massage school, we had the old glass ones. You put the flame inside of it and you stuck it on. I burned a few people. I was turned off by those bitches. So I did finally buy a new set, and it's the suction ones. And those worked out, and those brought back some of that scratching pain. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh my God, it's my fascia. So without getting into too much anatomy, if you've heard of myofascial release, You have your 12 layers of skin, then you've got layers of fascia, then like say depending on the area of your body, you have muscle, you can have some, depending if it's a joint, there's different layers that go underneath that, but your fascia is kind of what goes in between the muscle and the skin. And so there's lots of techniques where you can do skin rolling, and those are things that I hope to show you over the course of all these videos. Having a bit of a downpour right now. And so I started doing little techniques like that. And okay, so I would chart it. Okay, for a day or two, it would be a little bit tender on that site, but I felt a little relief. And then so I'd do a little bit more. And there were times where I dug in probably deeper than I needed to, but hey, I was already in pain. What was a little more pain some days? But I journaled it. I kept a nice log. I've probably got quite a few logs sitting around that I did journal my pain and just little things, even if it was just 1 or 2 words of myofascial rolling on scar tissue. Nothing serious, but enough to jog my memory of what I had done. Just like client notes. And so I started doing that. One of the very hard details of this is because it was my uterus and cervix. Sex was a hard thing. If there was any type of pain, actually, it took me a really long time to figure this out, but I mean, if there was pain on the outside of my scar tissue, it meant nothing should go inside. And that was hard. That was very hard for me and my husband. So it was a learning process in my relationship as well. And it led to a lot of hard emotions wrapped around all of these things. I mean, we're talking about a birth of a child, a change in a relationship, a change to the point of physical relationship has to completely change. And it's a lot to ask of a spouse. I should have brought Kleenex. But there was also things that I learned along the way that helps other people. And if that's the lesson and the blessing that I can pass on, that's why I want to share my story. Because it's very hard to continue to put yourself first in some of those situations. When you have your children who need you, when you have a job, when you have all of this stuff. And it's like, no, tonight I need to focus on this. Or no, we can't do that tonight because it will ruin my progress and my future to enjoy pleasure in my life. That actually, I'll try and make it a little lighter here. That actually led to my own therapy because I found this doctor. I actually went into my doctor one day. I'll back up a second. I went into my doctor one day and cried because the night before, me and my husband just had a very hard time. And that next morning I could barely move and I was spotting, and I found out I saw there was a pattern of me spotting every single time my husband and I were intimate. And it was just very hard to even acknowledge that myself, let alone talk to my husband about it, because there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of guilt. There was just a lot. And so my doctor found a specialist, and he happened to have an appointment open for me, and he gave me this long questionnaire. Does it hurt when you climax? Does it hurt when it's penetration? Like, does it hurt when there's just touch? Are you able to climax separate from your pain? And like, there were so many questions, and then I tried to make fun of it. I'm a Gemini, so I try and make everything lively and fun. And I did. I tried. I was like, okay, tonight we're going to check this off the box and we're going to find out what this one means. And, well, my husband didn't go for that. It was a little too much, and that's okay. I mean, that's a lot to ask. That's a lot to even expect, and a lot of pressure on things. And so it kind of came a game for myself in a way. So I would have fun and try and do this and this. I won't go into the details. This is YouTube, by the way. And I'm sharing with the whole world, so who knows who's gonna see this. Hey mom, hey dad. Which they are nurses, by the way, so I'm sure they will completely get this. And I'm their daughter, so hats off to you. Anyways, so you have to take light to it. I even did an entire series called, so what my surgeon had recommended was called vaginismus training, and that's actually where there's a set of dilators along with a booklet, and that actually was an amazing tool because it was like you needed to journal, and then it even talked about trauma and pain. And that was when, I knew that there was a lot of pain and emotions tied to mine, but it opened up doors that I wasn't aware that I needed to open. And that's what I'm hoping I can pass on to people as well, is just opening the doors, not knowing they needed those. There was just so many little things as I think back now over it has been, my son is 9 now. It's been 9 years since he was born. And I am grateful for that day every day, but along this pain and healing journey, it's like the onion. I keep hearing this term of the onion. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, the layers and layers. We all must have onions this big. Because I still keep finding them every day. There's just always some layer hidden beneath it. And so as I went through this healing process, things changed in my life. I found a new job that didn't require me to necessarily be the table side, but now I'm bedside taking care of elderly people, and getting to sometimes heal through helping them too, and seeing a reflection of my pain with them, listening to their stories. My husband and I have divorced since then, and working through some of those emotional layers and all that's tied up and bundled up in there too. It's a whole nother onion. I've got a whole field plant of onions, I guess, as I'm sure we all do. But yeah, there's just so many components in it. Baths have always been very special to me. So I would always do baths around my cycle when I did have them. And I would take healing crystals, different salts. I would do special spa sessions for myself. And if you are a mother with 2 boys, you know how precious 20 minutes in that bathroom, door closed, nobody bothers you. Maybe a few knocks at the door, but you know how precious that time is. And I made use of every bit of that time. And then I would come and journal or meditate sometimes after the kids went to bed, if I could remember what had come up during those times. But having a good friend to talk to about it as well really helps. I know I'm kind of rambling at this point, and if you watch me regularly, that's probably going to happen. Sorry, disclaimer. I do have to say, one of the biggest blessings I had on my pain journey is meditation. That is one, journaling and meditation. I've always been a good charter with massage therapy, so the journaling wasn't a huge jump. But meditation and having my mala and having a practice has always helped me. I actually started when I was pregnant with my second son. I started meditating more when I was having insomnia and couldn't sleep and just couldn't get comfortable with the pregnancy itself. I had meditated previously, but not as intently. And having my own seed mantra to help focus my mind off of the pain. And so there's some different meditation and breathing techniques that I would like to work with as well. And again, I know I'm being a little bit more exclusive to those that have had feminine issues, endometriosis, and pregnancy, similar to the Lamaze breath. There's a couple breathing techniques that work very well. Sometimes when I just feel very confused, like an alternate nostril breathing works really well. In order to lift my spirits, there's a couple like Kapalabhati breath and Bhastrika that really help. But I hope to guide you and give you some of these practices so you can try them and see what works for you. I'm not going to say that all these practices work for everybody, because everybody's so different and unique and just so beautifully you, that you need to find what resonates with your heart, that resonates with your soul, and speaks to you. I mean, and not speaks to you here or here or here, but here. And even speaks to your pain. There's something to be said about speaking to your pain. I had this one traumatic time. It wasn't the actual trauma of what caused it, but when the flashes came back, I found myself, we were at a gathering, and not even in my own home or anything, and I was in so much pain. I had to go and sit in somebody's bedroom and actually lay on their hardwood floor, my legs up on the bed, and I sat there shaking and crying. I was shaking and crying. It was like violent through my body. Every cell of my body felt the pain and the trauma from years just come up to the surface. And it was so, I couldn't stop crying. Even though it was the middle of the summer, I was so cold and hot all at once. I just sat there and shook and cried and shook and cried. And yes, something emotionally set me off. And I think the people that were around me, bless their heart, I think they probably thought I was going nuts. And who knows, maybe I was. But I mean, so much was coming to the surface. I didn't know how to contain it. And all I could do was sit and cry. And I put myself in that position. And that was probably one of the first times I realized how much I needed to really dedicate myself toward a practice of finding the deep, deep root of this emotional pain. And some of it had resulted from emotional pain I had suffered a while ago. Some of it had been accumulated from the birth of my son. So it was like that wound was created at the initial one, but then because I started building this wall around my pain, I used all the emotions from all these experiences, and I was just pulling that in and using that as the mortar, using that as the cement to build a higher and higher emotional wall around my pain. So that all of a sudden, when something like cracked the side of the wall, and it was a very traumatic experience looking back on it now, but it just opened up like a dam. And all these emotions came pouring out. And I felt broken. I felt like there was no more of me. And it was one of the hardest moments. I remember being in a fog for days after it. Like I was just numb. So much was coming out and coming to the surface. I don't wish that on anyone, but I know we all do it. And I'm going to say it again. I hope I can give somebody the tools to help lessen their pain, whether it be emotional, spiritual, physical, mental. It all ties together because we are all one being. I mean, you can't take the blood out of this body and still expect the rest of it to work. You can't take a muscle out of the body and still expect it to work. We have to work on all of us as a whole. And I just hope you can glean some bit of wisdom from listening to me, from hearing me, and maybe I can pass a few things on that will help you. So, before I start crying and need to get the tissues out, I want to say have a great day. Thank you for listening. Namaste and blessed be. Thank you, my beautiful souls.